Hi, everybody. Welcome to Colorado Inside Out. I'm your host, Dominic Dezzutti. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us. As is the tradition here on Colorado Inside Out, tonight we are taking a look forward to 2014 and what we think will be the big issues and stories next year. Patty Calhoun from Westward, if you had to pick one word or phrase that you think will describe 2014, what would it be?
I'm going to go with a hyphenated word, fired up, between what the ramifications of 64 becoming legal and what is going to be going on in this state with recreational pot, but also the political campaigns that are coming and just how revved up the Republicans are to see if they can take over the Senate, see if they can take over the governor's house. I think people are just going to be burning with ambition.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School, what's your word for 2014?
Remedial, as people try to deal with all the things that got screwed up in 2013, like their own health, losing their health insurance, losing their doctor, all the many harms that the state legislature inflicted on rural Colorado.
Eric Sonneman, analyst with SC2, what's your word or phrase for 2014?
I'm closer to Patty on this one. My word is contentious. I think it is a contentious year. That's a safe bet these days. Every year it seems to be contentious. But no matter the fact that we're going to have legalized pot as of January 1, which you think would mellow people out, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of mellowness, whether it's statewide, national politics, or international relations and tensions on the international scene. This will be a contentious year.
Good word. I agree with that one. Alicia Caldwell from the editorial page of the Denver Post, finish it up for us.
I'm going to say Groundhog Day. I think in Washington, we're not done with the Affordable Care Act. There's going to be the same sort of fights and battles over amending it, repealing it. There are going to be the budget debt ceiling cliff disasters that happen, it seems, every 6 weeks. And in Colorado, it'll be weed, fracking, and guns again and again and again.
Sounds like a bad TV movie just getting recycled. I like that. Topic one, the biggest story of 2014 will likely be the November election. Senator Mark Udall is running for re-election, as is Governor John Hickenlooper. 2013 provided both incumbents with many issues that will likely dog them well into the election season. Both GOP primaries are currently crowded and include a wide variety of Republican personalities. The fight to become the Republican nominee in both races will likely leave the winner fairly bruised and battered before the general election. Okay, Patty, let's take a look at both races. You don't need to make a prediction per se. We'll leave predictions to the end of the show, but what do you think of the races, and then maybe at least who do you think the GOP nominees might be?
Well, both Mark Udall and Hickenlooper have been targeted. I mean, the Republicans would like very much to beat them, but these are two strong political characters, and they're also good fighters. So Udall has to live down the Obamacare. He's got the NSA opposition he showed early as something that'll bolster him. And what he also has is this crazy group of Republicans who are going to be beating each other up nonstop for months until the June primary. So I think they will come out, whoever emerges, and I think, we're not supposed to predict. Whoever emerges, we can predict whoever emerges, and I think it'll probably be Ken Buck, but he'll come out bloodied, and Udall will be able to win on something like that. And Hickenlooper, at the end of the year, he really seemed to be getting his mojo back. He behaved himself very well, handled the Arapahoe shooting well. He was at the hospital several times to see Claire Davies, the very grievously injured girl. He dealt well with that. He dealt well with the reporters talking about the legislative session. He has promised to veto at least something in the upcoming session. And, he's made fun of some of his foibles. The fact that he hadn't vetoed anything last year, the fact that the rural communities have been upset with him. So I think he's coming out fighting. And in the meantime, the Republicans are going to be fighting each other. So whoever emerges from that one, and that's a tough one too, but I'll say right now, I'll predict Gessler on that one. But whoever comes out is going to be bloodied, and I think Hickenlooper will beat them.
And your predictions have done far better than, early in the 2000s,
Yes,
it was
well,
kind of the kiss of death, but
They're kind of in
now.
that old sweater era.
Exactly. Now they're far better. So let's, David, what do you think of the races coming up, specifically with the governor and U.S. Senate, and also the primaries? Do you think it's going to be a GOP purist thing, where it's going to be just purity about, if you've got to be really, really conservative, or there's going to be a little more pragmatism this year?
Well, I think that it's not true that primaries are always harmful to the party that has them. Often they're a chance for candidates to gain some experience and also to be road tested and see how somebody's doing. The other thing, the opposite way, is to say we'll just have the party establishment sit down and decide whose turn it is, and that sometimes works well and often works badly. Point back to when was an incumbent senator defeated in Colorado. For example, in 1974, when Peter Dominick, two-term, good senator, Republican, very competent and respected, was defeated by Gary Hart, and Gary Hart came out of a five-way race for the Democratic nomination. So primaries are not a problem in themselves. Udall's core problem is one that has nothing to do with primaries, and there's nothing he can do to get away from it. He was the decisive vote for the enactment of Obamacare. Now, if Obamacare works and it helps lots of people in Colorado, that'll be great, and he'll probably get reelected. But if it continues the way it is going, and it's not just a website problem, it's causing so many people to lose their insurance, lose their doctors, that is going to be, I think, a weight that may be something that he can't escape from.
And to be fair, though, it seemed like there were a lot of deciding votes that pushed Obamacare over the...
Yes, but if Mark Udall were not the U.S. Senator, I mean, if he'd if he'd gone mountain climbing in Tibet, then we wouldn't have Obamacare.
An ill-timed non-mountain trip. I get it. Eric, as you look at this, I'm not sure if it's going to be the primaries you focus on, or at least maybe Hickenlooper and Udall. Udall seems to be done as much as he can right. Hickenlooper seems to be getting his mojo back, but certainly not to the halcyon days of being the mayor of Denver. What do you make of the races for next year?
You would think that John Hickenlooper would be in better political position than Mark Udall, given, first of all, the popularity he started with, and secondly, that Coloradans tend to fall more in love with governors and people who are Colorado-based versus federal people who are dealing with a much more polarized Washington, who are dealing with Obamacare, and who are just representing us at the federal level. What's interesting is that's not the case, at least in early polling. In early polling, Udall is in somewhat stronger position in his race than Governor Hickenlooper is in his. Now, that's all obviously subject to change. I think what is going to fuel a lot of this year is the Republicans finally think, we'll see if it's a false wish or a true wish, they finally think they might be back in the game. They have had a long pronounced losing streak in this state. The last time a Republican won a major statewide race, by major I mean either a governor's race or a U.S. Senate race, was 12 years ago in 2002 when Wayne Allard defeated Tom Strickland. That is a long losing streak. That will get a whole lot of coaches fired if it was a football losing streak. And the Republicans are trying to reverse that. There are two factors that I'm really paying attention to here. One is whether the Republicans can avoid the bloodbaths that they have become known for. And yes, David points out how 20, 30, 40 years ago, primaries were beneficial to the Gary Harts and Dick Lambs and many other people of the world. That world has changed, and primaries these days have a way, particularly on the Republican side, taking electable candidates and making them unelectable in the course of that 3-month primary run. So one is who the Republicans nominate and whether they can let that nominee emerge from the primary without being pushed so far right or so bloodied that they're unrecognizable. Second factor is just the national tenor, the national wind. As we enter this year, the numbers are looking very good for Republicans on a national level, that this would be a bounce-back election for Republicans, an anti-Obama incumbency in his 6th year, etc. 10 months is a long time, but if that trend holds, there are a whole lot of people from the Hickenlooper campaign, the Udall campaign, and run the list of Democratic campaigns who are going to be very nervous.
Alicia, as you look at this, do you think Republicans have become pragmatic enough to want to win a race? Because they've had advantages before. 2010 was supposed to be a big Republican year, and Colorado Republicans found a way to trip on that. this may be more the same, or there might be some pragmatism there when at least when it comes to the primaries of trying to get something more strategic. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a real split in the leadership versus sort of the rank and file and the rank and file in primaries. The leadership certainly wants to, I think, the money people, the people who are appointed to positions and running the party want to have the kind of statewide candidate who can take on a John Hickenlooper or a Mark Udall. But when the primary system is so much different and it tends to draw out the kind of people who go with the hard right candidate, and that's just not going to fly in Colorado. And I think, I think as others have said around the table, that Ken Buck will emerge as Udall's challenger and Scott Gessler as Hickenlooper's challenger. Now, in the theoretical, these races are somewhat close, but as voters get to know, say, Ken Buck and some of the high heel comments, do you remember that?
We have the source of it right here at this table, absolutely.
Start coming out, and Gessler tends to be the skunk at the garden party kind of politician.
Gets in a campaign ad now.
That's sort of the downside of the whole honey badger persona, is that he can be a kind of nasty partisan. And Colorado doesn't tend to go that way with its statewide officials. They want somebody who can kind of bridge the middle, and I'm not so sure that these guys are going to be able to do that at the end of the day.
Let's get to topic 2. As we look to the 2014 legislature, we already know the state Senate will look a little different, with Democrats now only holding a 1-seat majority. While no new gun laws are currently being discussed, amending last year's laws may be up for discussion. Democrats in the legislature are also looking to improve relations with rural areas of Colorado after seeing 11 counties putting secession measures on 2013 ballots. The legislature will also need to take a fresh look at school financing after the defeat of Amendment 66 in 2013. David, as you look at the legislature for 2014, do you expect something looking at the election and being a little bit more careful, going back a little bit, or this is our last chance to dance pedal to the metal?
I think the conventional wisdom is that by electing Morgan Carroll as Senate president, the majority of the Democratic caucus chose pedal to the metal, YOLO. We're going to be in power now, and we probably won't be next year, so go for all the gusto you can. Education constructive reforms are going to have a real problem because the rumor was that Senator Hudak resigned and gave up her chairmanship of the Education Committee under the condition that the new chair of the Education Committee be someone who would be equally zealous as her in agreeing with the Colorado Education Association and opposing what many other folks would consider to be reforms. That's what happened with Senator Kearse, so that there's just a bottleneck on positive change in education. On the Senate as a whole, I think the underreported story is that there is sort of a gang of 4 women, moderates in their parties, who are going to hold the balance of power on things. That would be on the Democratic side, Senators Toctrop, Hodge, and John, and on the Republican side, Senator Roberts. So these 4 women, I think if anything that has the support of those 4, that's what the Senate's going to be able to pass.
Eric, what do you think? Is it a year where Democrats should just pass as much as they can because they may not see the trifecta for a while, or is it time to be a little more strategic?
I think it's time to be more strategic, and I think that's where they're going to go. To the extent that 2013 was one of the more consequential legislative sessions we've seen in a long, long time, I'm anticipating that 2014 will be one of the least consequential sessions we've seen. If 2013 was ambitious, this is going to be a session of retrenchment. For starters, I don't know what's left on the list. They ticked off so many things on the list in 2013. I don't really know what's left on the list, save for the fracking issue, and there, obviously, they have a problem on the first floor of the Capitol with Hickenlooper, and him not going to go along with the ambitions of a lot of Democrats in terms of fracking bans and what have you. And I do think the Democrats in the legislature, even with Morgan Carroll heading the Senate, are enough of team players. They don't want to complicate Hickenlooper's reelection any more than it already is complicated.
But do you think they'll feed him a fracking ban to veto? Because then Democrats could have to say, hey, we tried to pass it, and then Hickenlooper could have that vote for moderates?
I don't know. I would, if I was to bet, I would bet no. I would bet that they don't want to go down that road. Hickenlooper's made clear he's going to veto something. I think some obscure legislator could probably gain a lot of popularity with the governor by just throwing some bill out there saying, here's the pinata. Go hit it. I do think there's going to be an opportunity for some Republican mischief. I mean, one theory I've heard going around is that Republicans are going to surface some kind of death penalty ban, or somebody from a pro-life point of view might come up with a death penalty ban that is rooted in that pro-life philosophy and force Democrats to go on record about that, et cetera. So there will be plenty of political games and political mischief, but in terms of the scope of the session, it will be unrecognizable from last year.
Alicia, what do you think? What do you think we'll be talking about a year from now about the 2014 legislature?
Well, I tend to agree with Eric that they have taken on so many of the big issues. There aren't that many left, but how they conduct themselves will matter in great measure. For instance, you know there's going to be introduced measures to repeal some of these gun laws, and how the Democratic majority handles that will matter just as much as, frankly, as the outcome. I mean, obviously, or I say obviously, well, I don't think it's going to pass. I don't think they will pass, but how they do it, do they send it to a kill committee? Do they have real hearings? How that process is conducted will really matter in terms of the tenor of the political debate. I think also that they will think that they're trying to moderate themselves, but the allure of power will prove to be just too much, and something will sneak out there that we hadn't anticipated. Maybe not fracking, maybe something with trial lawyers, or loosening up laws on sex offenders. I don't know, but you know something's coming.
It is a very tempting majority.
Yes.
Patty, wrap it up for us. What do you think we'll be talking about next year about the 2014 legislature?
Well, we probably won't be talking about any fracking bill they passed, because we're going to have a statewide vote on that, and they would be smart to just let it go to the people. At a certain point, that might happen with the death penalty too, that we could see that going to a vote of the people, which was kind of floated a little bit last year. I hope we are talking about legislation passed to deal with some of the mental health issues that were legislation we thought we were going to see in 2013.
Especially a year that will include James Holden's trial, theoretically, as we stand at this point. Let's get to topic 3. While the Senate and governor races will take up much of the ad space in 2014, other big races and issues will draw attention in Colorado. As we talked about just now, a statewide fracking ban is expected to be on the ballot, and the 6th congressional district between incumbent Representative Mike Kaufman and Democrat Andrew Romanoff is on the short list nationally of the most competitive congressional races in 2014. Eric, as you look at fracking ban, CD6, anything else you think will be the kind of on the undercard? What's your take?
I think there are 3 big items on the undercard. I think you hit 2 of them. Probably some statewide fracking ban, or something close to a total ban that will be put on by initiative. And I think it will fare. The whole state does not look like Boulder and Fort Collins, so I think that will be a tough sell, but it will be a very contested campaign. Secondly is Congressional District 6. Romanoff's a very viable candidate. It just depends how tough that national headwind is. If it is a Republican year, he will have a tough time dislodging Mike Kaufman, depending again on the national win. The third one is the battle for legislative control. The Republicans are going to go all out to get at least one chamber, if not both chambers. Most informed speculation is that the Republicans have a better shot in the Senate. The maps are a little more favorable. They're only down 18-17, so they only need to turn 1 seat there now. They need to obviously protect their 2 replacements in those recall seats, Rivera and Herpin. But I think those are the 3 top items on the undercard.
Nice job on the 2013 trivia point, the 2 recall winners. Everyone knows the loser. Good job, Eric. Alicia, what do you think as of the other stories, the CD6s, the fracking bans, the legislature, where do you think they're going to fall?
2 words: outside money. In 14, it'll be a great year to own a television station.
A commercial television station.
A commercial, well, yeah, true enough. Sorry, my friend.
That's okay. That's okay. We can find a loophole. We'd love it.
Can you just? I mean, you can just imagine the kind of money that's going to come in on CD6 on that race. That's a national. That has national a national profile. So there's going to be quite a bit of money coming through that race. Fracking also has that, a fracking ban that would be on the ballot that would also have the same sort of push in terms of money. Ledge control, probably not quite as much, but there will be, certainly inside money from within the state mustered to try to get that majority. So, I think it'll be a big money year and we'll be bombarded with ads.
Patty, we're always coming up with some reason for national money to pour into the state of Colorado. Will it be all the races, governor, Senate, and then these undercard races, or is there something else on the horizon?
I think we'll actually even see some coming in for Secretary of State and the Treasurer, because what you're looking at is the next generation of politicians. Who's going to be coming in when Udall's out, when Hickenlooper is out. So we're looking at very contentious races in some of those areas too. So I think we'll see money coming in for that. We'll see plenty of money coming in from fracking. We'll see money coming in maybe not for an election, but to influence the legislature on gun laws, whichever way we go. So there'll be plenty of money, and I don't think that's going to be going to alternative newspapers either.
but there is something out there. I was going to say, yeah, very good point. David, what do you think of the undercard races and also the influence between fracking, the fracking ban? It's not like oil and gas companies are poor and we're just trying to put up the tin cup trying to raise their money for the ads, but thought to be a little bit more nuanced than what we'll probably see from environmental groups just saying that fracking will kill you, and then you have to fight that point. What do you think?
Well, and hopefully it doesn't get decided by people who only learn about what fracking is by watching television ads pro and con. Hopefully the people who are actually the working men and women in the oil and gas industry in Colorado will have a way where their voice and their experience comes forward, and the actual experience of their neighbors who will say, yeah, sometimes drill rigs are kind of loud and it's annoying, but no, the idea that it's going to make your water catch on fire and things like that is just a bunch of lies put forward by people who have a agenda of destroying the use of natural energy in our state. I think it's interesting on the races, the ones that don't get talked about, everybody's given up on ever defeating Ed Perlmutter. After 2010, which was a Republican year, and there was a good candidate, and then 2012 again, when Coors ran against him, and he was a good candidate and ran a good race. At this point, I think the Republican view is he's invincible, and we might as well just get used to him. Likewise, Scott Tipton, the Western Slope, swing district, but apparently people's view is that with the Obamacare catastrophe, this is not going to be a year to pick up a swing district out there. Jared Polis, I think, is also invulnerable, but he's using his position really well, and we're going to continue to see him become increasingly important on the national stage.
I think you're absolutely right, especially, and then maybe if Kaufman defeats Romanoff, which is one of the higher levels of the Democratic bench, maybe he attains that Perlmutter untouchable level. We'll have to wait to find out. Well, let's take some time at the end of the show. Usually do Disgrace of the Week and say something nice, but obviously we don't know about that for 2014. So let's take a bold political prediction for 2014. Patty, start us off.
My bold political prediction, and of course my record's horrible, so Mayor Michael Hancock probably doesn't need to worry, but I think we're going to see a challenger come from somewhere to challenge him for 2015.
Wow, I see. Everyone was talking about Congress and everything else. Way to go out of the normal soap. I like that, Patty. David.
In House of Cards, Vice President Frank Underwood will arrange for Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty to become the senator from Louisiana.
I can see that happening. Eric.
Don't know where to go from that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was true following David a couple weeks ago and following this time. To give it your best shot.
I'm going to go two different places quickly. One is, I think on a national level, you will start seeing Democrats in Congress moving away from Obama, particularly as Obamacare gets more and more problematic. If Obama's numbers don't improve and the midterm election is looming, politicians are nothing if they're not self-survivalists and self-interested first. The deference that has been paid by many Democrats to Obama for 6 years will start withering quickly. On the international level, I'm very curious as to what is going to ensue between Israel and Iran, and whether Israel is just going to let this play out or if Israel is going to intervene. I think there will be sabers rattled internationally.
Alicia.
I think the power struggle, which has largely been flown under the radar down in Colorado Springs between the mayor and council, is really going to come to a head. It's gotten pretty nasty. There have been vetoes and overrides and that sort of thing. This all stems from the switch in the form of government to a strong mayor form of government, and they're trying to hash out who does what, and it really has gotten pretty heated. I think one of these days it's going to pop up on YouTube like one of those South Korean parliament fights, you know, where they throw down over school lunch subsidies or something. I mean, it's just gotten really sort of heated, and it'll be interesting to see how this goes.
Well, I'll enter the fray a little bit of a nod to Eric's. I think you're absolutely right about Iran, but I'll tie it to possibly being one of the elements that enters the fracking battle here in Colorado. It's one thing about environment and everything else, but if suddenly you can just make it on the independent energy route, I can sway some independent voters. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Now we go with our bold non-political prediction of 2014. Patty, start us off.
Well, I think this is a pretty good shot. I will be right on this. At the same time, we're looking to the future. We have two major anniversaries in Colorado that will really have us looking at our state and the history of it. The 150th anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre, and there's a lot of residents there still, and the 100th anniversary of the Ludlow Massacre. So we're talking about our treatment of Native Americans, we're talking about labor. There's going to be a lot to talk about.
David.
Colorado Rockies executives who have been criticized for so many things will be quite grateful that attention for the most boneheaded maneuver by a sports executive in recent history will focus on the Nuggets for getting rid of George Karl, the NBA Coach of the Year.
Nice. Eric?
I'll stay with the sports theme. And there's wishful thinking, but there's also predictions, and let's see if mine is just one or both. I think the Broncos make it to the Super Bowl here in the coming weeks. I'm less confident, not going to go out on a limb in terms of where they win the Super Bowl. Hope so, but I think they get their beautiful New York City or the Meadowlands at the end of January.
And prove that Peyton Manning can play in the snow.
Exactly.
To piggyback on that, I think they will. I think the Broncos will get to the Super Bowl. I think they'll lose to the Seahawks.
Oh, boy.
Can I get an escort to
You
my
may
car
need
after the
one,
show?
Yes, you may need some. We have an intern start your car. That's not a problem.
Gotta speak truth to power.
I'll enter the fray. I think a person with Colorado ties, Amy Adams, I think she walks away with the Oscar this year. And just there's a lot of buzz with what she did with American Hustle. Well, that's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for tuning in. On behalf of our entire station, thank you for your support throughout the year. For everyone here at Channel 12, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks for watching. Good night.